It is Friday, July 5th, 2024. This is Football Today. You know those dudes, Justin Penik, Bobby Skinner. I am Chris Rose. Producer Mikey is back as well. And Justin, it is good to have you back with us as well. I'm not sure if you heard the top of the last episode or not.
Oh, I did. I loved it. I loved it. Let's get a guest on. Welcome to this football channel. Welcome to this. Here's Bobby Skinner. Here's Chris Rose, and here's Justin Penik, who's not here because of his grandmother's wake. I loved it.
Connor knows the deal, right? Like Connor, he saw whoever, you know, when we were in Mobile, Alabama, there's like some fan who puts all these Talking Giant stickers on the Dunkin' Donuts. Like he was the first media member to send that to me and said, "I love this." And I told him we were trying to find out who it is. So Connor knows the deal. He's a great guy.
Yeah. He is awesome. And best hair we've ever had on the show.
Oh, pearly whites.
Yeah,
I was blown away.
He's a rising star in the industry.
That's what I texted him afterward. I said, "Boy, oh boy, glad I got a piece of this rocket ship while I'm around." That was
he uses
nice.
his looks to get by. Oh my god!
I know.
I'm kidding.
Some of us used to try to do that, not anymore. All right, so today we are ranking position groups that are not quarterbacks. We've done our quarterback ranking show. That was fun. These are the other position groups. So we ranked them top 6 or so. And so we're going to go through each of these and kind of see where we differ. I think that's probably the most interesting stuff. So, Justin, welcome back. Why don't you lead off on the running backs? Give us your list. We can kind of go around and see where we agree and differ. Let's do it.
I love it. All right. So positional groups. I have the Miami Dolphins at number 1. I have the Detroit Lions at 2. I have the 49ers at 3. Here's the big wild card. The Pittsburgh Steelers are at number 4. The Falcons are at 5. And the Los Angeles Rams are at 6. Bobby, give me your list.
But mine is 49ers 1. Running back is, depth matters, but if you're a lead back, you are the running back room. So number 1, 49ers, Chris McCaffrey. Number 2, you guys know I'm a big Bijan Robinson fan. I have the Atlanta Falcons, and you have a Tyler Algier who, he has 2,000 scrimmage yards in his first 2 years in the NFL, right? Bijan without a ton of carries was 6 in scrimmage yards, top 10 in the NFL. Was more efficient than, basically everyone besides McCaffrey and James Cook. And then the Lions, number 3, I think they have the best duo in this. The Ravens 4 with Derrick Henry, and then you have Justice Hills, who started games. Keaton Mitchell, who, Keaton Mitchell had over 8 yards per carry last year and then got hurt. But Henry was like second in the NFL in rushing yards with an awful offensive line, with a bad passing game. Really excited to see him in Baltimore. The Eagles, number 5 was Saquon. Saquon is not the guy he was early in his career, but still a really good back. I think you're going to, see a resurgence out of him, and then Kenny Gainwell. And then the Colts, I have 6 with Jonathan Taylor. They have bad depth. I'm not a big Trey Sermon fan, and I put the Rams and Jets as honorable mention.
Okay. Penik, I'm with you on the Dolphins, then the Niners, Lions. Here's where I start to go haywire on my own sheet because I'm like, you're an idiot, but let's do it anyway. Packers at 4, Ravens at 5, and I cannot believe I did this, but because of several things that I will discuss, I have the Jets at 6. Then most people won't even have them in their top half, but that's fine. I will defend that in a bit. I think we're good kind of on Miami and the Niners and the Lions. Like
we though? How do you guys have Miami number 1? Like who their best back is Raheem Mostert. I know Devin A-Chain is electric, but like you're saying you would trade that room. You wouldn't trade that room straight up for the 49ers, the Falcons, the Lions, the Ravens, the Eagles. Like you wouldn't, because I wouldn't even have to think twice about it.
You want to know what? So Devon A-Chan. Also, I think the important thing to talk about this is we're not just talking. There obviously one player does elevate a room, but we're evaluating the positional groups and the rooms that are in these NFL.
But we're not
teams.
judging. Has nothing to do with the offensive line and offensive system. This is just position groups.
And I like to look at a lot of what I based on my running back rankings are rushing yards over expected, and that's a next gen stat where basically it's meant to take out offensive line and the impact of the offensive line. Where a running back based on player tracking data is expected to gain a certain amount of yards on every single play and every single rushing attempt, and then rushing yards over expected measures, well, what does that running back bring to the table? Is he performing above his own expectation? And Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert were two of the league's best in rushing yards over expected last year. Achane was the most efficient north-south runner in the league, according to Next Gen. They have an efficiency stat. And then also they added Jalen Wright, which he has the runs of 10 plus yards during his time in Tennessee during 2023. 25% of his carries went for over 10 plus yards. So it's not just the offensive line, and it's not just McDaniel. Yes, that stuff helps, but even the metrics that measure running back performance, they were really, really good in those categories.
So you would trade Raheem Mostert, no contracts not involved. If you were the San Francisco 49ers, you'd trade Christian McCaffrey, Mitchell, and Garendo for Mostert, Achane, and Jalen Wright.
I'm going to sound like an idiot when I say yes because it's Christian McCaffrey, but again, we're talking about rooms. We're talking about rooms, and I think the Dolphins,
the third string running back is not the same.
The Dolphins,
as part of the room.
The Dolphins having much more.
Receivers.
The Dolphins having much more complete room, in my opinion, than the San Francisco 49ers do.
But you would make that trade 3 for 3.
No, because Christian McCaffrey is a better player than Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert.
You're saying
the Dolphins having more complete room.
Go ahead.
I have the 49ers third.
I've got them second, so I could have flipped them and been just as fine with it. The thing is that I think the way that McDaniel uses his running backs is really interesting. And Achane is a guy who is going to explode this year.
I agree.
He had 100 carries, and he averaged 8 yards a carry. He averaged 8 yards a carry. And I am a Jalen Wright guy. I couldn't believe him. They got where he fell in the draft. I thought that was really good. And I disagree with you guys. I didn't look at this strictly as a room-by-room basis when it came to running backs. You have to factor the offensive lines in. Because you can't. Nobody. That's a cute little stat you have, Justin, in terms of, well, they try and figure if nobody blocks for him, what do you split? That's not how it works. So which is why I put the Jets in the top 6. I think the Jets offensive line, which we will discuss momentarily, has significantly improved. I am an enormous Breece Hall fan. And the two guys they drafted in the middle rounds, I do think that Allen and Davis are guys that I think they're going to help out significantly. And plus the fact that Aaron Rodgers is going to play, all this stuff is going to make your running backs room better. So you can't just look at it in a vacuum. That's not the way I did.
Well, I look at it in a vacuum as like independent of like what do I think about those players, and I'm not really looking at too much into like just stats, because we're judging, especially running back, which is a position that is most dependent on other players on the team. So I don't hate the Jets in there at all. Like Breece Hall is amazing. Breece Hall needs to do a little better taking some of the dirty yards, right? And he's been called out by his own coaching staff for that. But he's electric, right? He's a game changer. And I agree with you, Rose. Like if they had a better offensive line, Breece Hall would be getting a lot more love than what he is. He's an awesome back. It was hard for me to not put him in there. The Rams is a nice duo, but again, I'm not putting him in there. So you guys are talking about like all around rooms. I think if you're talking about all around room, just like I think Montgomery and Gibbs is like the best 1-2. Like that's the best number 2 in the NFL is Jahmyr Gibbs, right?
I was shocked last year. I thought when they signed David Montgomery, I was like, really? David Montgomery? It feels like it's going to fall off a cliff. And it was the exact opposite. I thought he had one of the most surprising, in a really positive way, years. And I was happy for him. I thought it was great for him and great for that franchise, too.
They both had so much volume. I mean, Montgomery was 9th in rushing. Gibbs was 17th. Gibbs was 3rd in yards per carry. Montgomery was 8th in yards per carry. And then Gibbs added 63 catches in the air. Like that, right. To me, that's the best 1-2 punch in the NFL. I just like Bijan I have the Falcons too. I like Bijan Robinson more than both those guys by a good margin. I think Bijan's the second best back in the NFL to Christian McCaffrey. So that's why I put the Falcons number 2. Did you guys have the Eagles on the list? You guys are really down on Saquon?
No, Kenneth Gainwell does nothing for me.
Plus, I don't know why, but like the last thing I think about when I think about the Eagles offensively is running backs. It's the last thing I think about. their offensive line in no particular order. I do think about their offensive line, quarterback, and pass catchers way before I even think about the running backs.
That's true, but that's because Swift was good for them. But Swift, I think, is one of the more overrated backs. There's a reason Detroit got rid of him, is because he has awful vision, but he is an explosive athlete. And then Miles Sanders was so successful and then was awful in Carolina, again partly due to the offensive line, but Sanders was never like a game-changing back. But now they have the best back that they've had. I'm not excited as a Giants fan, but as an NFL fan, I am really excited. I really think Philly is going to turn it around offensively this year. Defensively, they're relying on some young pieces and stuff, but offensively, I think they have all the abilities to be a top 3 offense in the NFL.
Real quickly, my 4 and 5 teams, the Packers, nobody else had them in there. I know Josh Jacobs, his productivity was cut in half when it went from rushing champ to essentially MIA. But now you're joining a room with A.J. Dillon, and Marshawn Lloyd is another draft pick, another mid-round pick, a kid that played at both USCs, South Carolina and Southern California. I think he's one of those guys. He's like 5'9", 220, bowling ball type stuff. I think he's really, really going to help that room out.
It'll be interesting to see if they push him above AJ, because I'm not an AJ Dillon fan, right?
Yeah, I know
think
you're
he
not.
needs to play behind his pads more. I think he has bad vision, and then to go he's someone that needs to lean into playing behind his pads a little more. So it'll be interesting to see if Marshawn Lloyd can move himself up to number 2 on that depth chart if it's not going well with Dillon.
Let me ask you something about the Ravens, and I had a hard time with this because I know it. Are you allowed to factor Lamar in? Because particularly when they get inside the 10, they design so many runs for him.
Are you saying Lamar's a running back, Chris Rose? Can we clip that?
Nope. I am not saying that he's a running back, but I'm saying he's such a big part. How many other teams, with the exception of the tush push, design runs for guys inside the 10? I think Josh Allen, a lot of those feel freelanced. And with Lamar, I do think that they're a part of the offense.
They're part of the rushing attack, but not the running back room.
Right. So I had a hard time.
Yeah, and again, I like the Ravens' backups don't really do much for me either. Where I think
about 8 yards. Keaton Mitchell had 8 yards per carry. You put Devin Achane in there.
I mean, that's a very, very limited sample size. Well, Devin Achane had 100 attempts and 800 yards. That's fucking bananas.
It is.
So, but I did include in my brain, like, why the Ravens didn't make my top 6 is because I do think some of those running backs, as the years have gone on, number 1, they have really good offensive lines. And then number 2, the influence and the impact of Lamar Jackson does make those running backs' jobs, I think, a little bit easier. I mean, and this isn't to disrespect Derrick Henry. It's just the rest of the room doesn't do much for me. I want to, we do
you
have
guys
to
still think Derrick Henry has all of it? Because I do. He's probably my number 3 back in the NFL.
All of it's a stretch.
Not all of it, but still one of the best top 5 backs in the NFL.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, I did.
He's good.
I did call his 3rd game of the season last year for Browns radio, and their offensive line, we talked about Tennessee, was atrocious. But I looked at it and I was like, holy smokes. Like, am I seeing the beginning of the end? And no, I don't feel that way. So he's still I don't know if he's top 5, but he's still really good.
I want to touch on one more thing because I think we have to move quicker through these next couple position groups that we do. But I had the Steelers here.
We'll move quick through linebacker DBs. Go ahead. Steelers, go ahead.
I think this is a little out. If you were to tell me before I started this that I would include the Steelers, I would have said you're crazy. But then, hey, you know me, I'm a stats guy, I'm a numbers guy. I knew that I liked Jaylen Warren. And Jaylen Warren had really good numbers. He was 3rd in rushing yards over expected per attempt last year, behind Achane and McCaffrey last year. So he was 3rd. A success rate of almost 50% and 4.9 yards per carry, 27 broken tackles. That's a broken tackle every 5.5 attempts last year. And that has to be one of the best rates in the league. Yards after contact was solid too. Now, I've always thought of Jaylen Warren versus Najee Harris. I've always kind of thought of it as an Ezekiel Elliott versus Tony Pollard situation, especially like back in 2022. Obviously, Harris is not as old as Elliott is. But I thought it from the situation, the standpoint of the backup is clearly better than the starter. That is still true. But Najee Harris, he is a guy that does rely on volume, and his yards per carry numbers aren't great. I think 2023 was the first year where he actually got over 4 yards. But another offensive line situation that has not been great. Najee Harris breaks tackles, 30 broken tackles. He's always been a broken tackle guy. His yards before contact last year was tremendously, tremendously low. And his yards after contact was high, considering the yards before contact being that low. And usually a low yards before contact to me tells me that an offensive line is not performing great. So I look at that running back. What can the running back add with yards after contact? So Najee Harris, I hated him before this exercise. Thought it was overrated, not very good. Coming into this, I do have the Steelers as the fourth best running back room in the National Football League.
37 running backs with 850 scrimmage yards last year. The top 4 in yards per touch were Christian McCaffrey, James Cook, Jalen Warren, and Bijan Robinson. So Jalen Warren on there. Did you have any temptation to put the Bills on here?
I did, but then I checked the room and they lost pieces.
Yeah, Ray Davis is the rookie out of Kentucky is their number 2 right now.
It's not the same as it was last year. If they maybe had stolen
like
Latavius Murray in there, Damian Harris was there too, and none of those guys are there, right?
I like Ray Davis. Just for the record, I like him. Let's move on to the pass catchers. Bobby, why don't you take us through your list?
Yeah, so it's wide receiver and tight end.
Yep.
This was fun because there's so many good ones, right? And if we did like best wide receiver duo, it wouldn't be in this list. So wide receivers and tight ends. I went the Houston Texans number 1 with Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Dalton Schultz, right? Like you had three wide receivers who were top 24 in receiving yards per game. And then Schultz is one of my favorite players. I think one of the more underrated players in the NFL. A consistent 600-plus yard, 5-touchdown guy. So they have like the strongest, just all-around group in this. I put the Eagles number 2 with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, and then Paris Campbell in the slot. That's obviously a weak spot, but I think Paris Campbell will have a little bit of resurgence on the Eagles because he won't be getting as much attention on the quick game. The Dolphins number 3 with Tyreek Waddle, Barrios OBJ, and Jonnu Smith. The Vikings 4 with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Brandon Powell, and TJ Hawkinson. Bengals 5. The Bengals have, to me, the either second or third best duo, right? But Jermaine Burton's a rookie. You know, be interesting to see how they do without Tyler Boyd. I think even Charlie Jones can go in that. And I know they use the tight ends well, but I don't like their tight end room as a whole. And they're all negative blockers, which I did in bringing this. And then I put the 49ers 6, right? Just really well-rounded group. Debo, Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, and George Kittle. But they are 6 instead of higher because out of all the wide receiver ones, I have Brandon Ayuk the low. Like I went through this. Like Brandon Ayuk would be my 12th best wide receiver one in the NFL, which he's great and speaks to the wide receiver talent in the NFL, but he would be my number 12.
Rose?
Penik?
Oh, I'll go. I have the 49ers 1, and we'll talk about that, man. Like I just think there's all pros at every turn. And even like Jawan Jennings, if you had to make an all-pro blocking team, Jawan Jennings would make it. And you want to talk about tight end room, Logan Thomas he's the backup tight end for the San Francisco 49ers right now with George Kittle. And Logan Thomas has been around for a while, and he still caught a decent amount of balls last year. I have the Texans too. Nico Collins is an underrated wide receiver 1. Stephon Diggs doesn't have the pressure to be 140-plus target guy. You also have Dalton Schultz and Brevin Jordan. The Dolphins, I have 3. I think they are the best wide receiver duo in the league. In my opinion, the Vikings at 4. I'm high on Jordan Addison. The Eagles at 5. I don't like their lack of slot, and then the Bengals at 6.
I've got Miami 1. I also added running backs in this that can catch. I just did the way I look at it, and I think Achan's going to get 60 catches out of the backfield, at least 50. I just think he's a part of the program. I know that Jonnu Smith feels a little light there at the tight end, and
he's a good fit.
Yeah, he's good fit, and I just like the way that McDaniel runs his offense. It's there's going to be a lot of yards and a lot of points against bad teams. I'm not saying that this is the group that I would want to try and lead me through the playoff waters, but I think in terms of the regular season, they're fun. San Francisco, I can't believe I'm the only one that had Chicago in the top 6. Nobody else. It was hard
for me not to. But this is the most deep, like, right? Like I can make an art, like my honorable mention were the Bears and the Rams. It's just so deep. There's so many good receiving groups in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I've got Chicago there. I mean, I do think that Cole Kmet's a solid tight end. And once again, you can say whatever you want about DeAndre Swift and his vision. Guy caught 63 balls, I think, a few years ago. Philly, I've got them at 4, Houston 5, and then I had Minnesota, Green Bay. I kind of a toss up there. Minnesota does not have any depth, right? Powell's their third receiver, but those top two dogs with TJ Hawkinson, that is as good a 2 receivers and 1 tight end as you'll find, and that includes Philly, I think. So there you go.
And the Vikings have they just have the wide receiver 1 in the NFL, and a rookie with 900 yards and 10 touchdowns in Addison, and then a tight end with 1,900 yards the last 2 seasons and 11 touchdowns. So this is the one where I could take any of these 6 and make an argument for the number 1. Maybe not the Vikings because they're in there because of Justin Jefferson solely, but the Texans, Eagles, Dolphins, Bengals, and 49ers, I could make compelling arguments for all of them to be number 1. I put Texans number 1 just because they were so they're the most well-rounded. You could make the 49ers, I guess you could make the same argument, right? Justin,
and that's why I have them number 1.
Ricky Pearsall. So like the 49ers, I had them 6, but again, like I think Justin's argument for number 1 is a very good one. It's just the pass catchers in the NFL are so good. Like there's so many good groups.
Yes, but here's why. Let's call it what it is. The rules have never been more slanted to offense in the history of the sport. Like, really, it's impossible to play defense in this league, and it's really impossible to be a guy in the secondary. Just the rules are utterly insane. So guys are running, it feels a lot like 7-on-7 at times. And so that's what's going to be, like, I feel bad for people that have to pick the Hall of Fame 15 years from now. How are you really going to differentiate when you see all these ridiculous numbers by pass catchers? And you're like, well, he got 1,200 receptions in his career. But, back in the day, he might have had 750. There's no way that I would take him over Michael Irvin back in the day. It just doesn't, the rules are so heavily slanted. I will say this about Houston. They have the deepest room ever. Like, their next group of receivers, it's Mechie, Robert Woods, Noah Brown, and their backup tight end is Brevin Jordan, who will make like some sort of 70-yard reception once a year.
I love Brevin Jordan, and Noah Brown's been a guy who started games, and when I think Nico got injured in a game, and Noah Brown had like over 100 yards. So here's a question.
Noah Brown. Let me say this. I'm sorry, Bobby, because Noah Brown came from Dallas. If Noah Brown were still on the Dallas Cowboys, he would be split. He would be like competing for the number 2, number 3 receiver.
Yeah, he wouldn't be ahead of Brandon Cooks.
Instead, he's like we
didn't even mention the Cowboys. Like, they have a great receiving room, with CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson, and Brandon Cooks. I want to ask you this question. Who has the best number 2 wide receiver in the NFL? And here's a question I also have. Who was the number 2 on the Rams? Is it Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua?
I think it's at this point. At this point, I think it's Cooper Kupp.
I don't think so.
Because if Kupp is the number 2, he's the best number 2 in the NFL. And
I think Nico Collins is the best, because Stephon Diggs is now the number 1. So Nico Collins is the best number 2. Nico Collins was like top 5, top 4 in yards per route run last year.
Sure, but my number 2 rankings would go, if you're counting Cooper Kupp, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, Debo, and then Nico Collins.
Nico Collins is a really good player. We're calling him the best number 2 receiver in the NFL.
I put Waddle ahead of him too. I just went top 4 when I put my list together, but that's why. And here's another. Okay, let's ask another question. Who has the best wide receiver duo in the NFL? Is it the Eagles, the Dolphins, the Bengals?
I think it's the Dolphins.
I think it's the Dolphins too.
That's what I think. But I mean, Waddle is. There's always something wrong with him. He's the only guy who's not healthy at the beginning of July, too. Like, it's always something wrong. For me,
Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, they're all so great. I would put it right now, Hill, Chase. Actually, no, I'd go Hill, Chase. I don't know. But Devontae Smith, to me, is my favorite number 2 out of that, and that allows me just to pick the Eagles. And they're a perfect yin and yang, but between the two of them. Jalen Hurts, doesn't like pick one or the other really. So I would probably go Eagles as the best duo with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
Depending on quarterback play, I will not be surprised if a year or two from now we are including Jordan Addison in this list. I love Jordan Addison.
Yeah, it all depends on the quarterback there.
Yep, I feel like it all depends on who's getting him the ball. The Dolphins with Hill and Waddle, I believe the only teammate pair. Yes, I am confirming this right now. The only teammate pair in the top 8 in yards per route run last year.
By the way, Nico Collins, as nice a player as he is, needs to be thanking his lucky stars that C.J. Stroud came along. I mean, the guy had less than 40 catches each year in his first 2 years. Then he
He
goes
was
to
my
80
pick for
next
breakout
year.
player last year too.
Well, he did. He broke out. That's why when you talk about this stuff, I just don't think you can talk about it in a vacuum. I just don't. But that's me.
Yeah, for sure.
Offensive lines. We're going to run through this one real quick. Bobby, this is your forte. So why don't you go for it?
We're gonna run through it,
So
Chris?
I'm going Lions number 1. To me, it's not even questionable. It also reminds you, like, even the good offensive lines have weak spots. The Eagles number 2. I put the Falcons number 3, the Cowboys 4, and believe it or not, I put the Jets number 5, right? Which is crazy to think about how much it plagued them last year. Rams 6. I'm not like factoring in injury history too much in this. So the Lions have the best group last year, and they upgraded. Like, they lost Jonah Jackson and they brought in Kevin Zeitler's a better player than Jonah Jackson, in my opinion. Here's a question I have with you guys. I'm fascinated to see how the Eagles' offensive line is this year with losing Kelsey, because it's not just how good as he was in center. He got everybody, and they just didn't make mental mistakes ever. They don't make mental mistakes. They were always in the right place. It's going to be really interesting to see how that offensive line functions without him, especially if you get a Lane Johnson injury or something. Like, the Eagles, I'm interested in. Falcons, they need some guys to step up, but they've been really good. Cowboys, you're putting a lot of trust in rookies, after losing Tyron Smith and Tyler Biadasz, but you have 2 all-pro guards. And then the Jets on paper, you have Tyron Smith, who's a Hall of Famer, Elijah Vera Tucker, who's all-pro worthy player. You have the Ravens guys of Simpson and Moses. You drafted Olu, and then you have Joe Tippmann coming off of like a pretty decent rookie year. Like, again, they are obviously very reliant on health. Tyron Smith, Elijah Vera Tucker, like, those are guys you worry about health with. But those are two guys who could be all pro.
I have got Lions, Colts. Nobody mentioned the Colts. They return everybody. Their tackles are really good. They've got a pretty good guard from what I hear. Falcons, they return everybody too. They've spent a ton of draft capital on it, and I think that it's actually worked out. Eagles at 4. The biggest question I've got is, it's not just Kelsey, because you're moving Jurgens from guard to center. Now you're asking Steen to come in and play, and the guy hasn't just played very much. So it's possible you're weakening 40% of your offensive line from last year. Got my Cleveland Browns. Maybe I'm just trying to will this into existence, but they were down to their 5th and 6th tackles last year, and they still were putting points up.
Yeah, the Browns could definitely be put on here.
And then I got the Jets 6th, and you've already talked about them well. So with the Browns, their interior remained intact. Batonio, Teller, those are Pro Bowl guards. They've got a solid center. And then the tackle is going to be fascinating. There's early talk, and I can't substantiate it at all, that Jack Conklin will not be starting.
Did I bring this up? I swear I brought this up. That who's the backup tackle there? Dwan Jones? Or I get him confused with the guy
Dwan Jones came in and did a great job until he injured his knee. So it would be.
I talked about this.
It would be Wills on one
still
side.
staying at left tackle.
Yeah. Well, because neither Jones nor Conklin's a left tackle. So that's something to keep your eye on.
That's
I would
really
love that.
Interesting.
I would love that. I don't know about keeping Wills at left tackle. Is Conklin at this point a better? Well, Wills is younger and he's a
I
first round
wouldn't put
draft pick.
Conklin at left tackle.
No, that's
I'm not even talking about putting Conklin at left tackle because he's been a career right tackle. I'm talking about Dwan Jones. But I'm proud of myself. I introduced this a couple weeks ago where I was like, I don't know, Dwan Jones just seems like he's too good to not play. And lo and behold, that may happen. Camp Battle, look out for it. I have the Detroit Lions 1. Some of the reasons to Bobby. I have the Colts too, Chris, so you're not alone. You're not alone. I love that they're returning people. And you want to know, the Colts, it just feels like they don't have that weak link. Where even though Eagles have better players. The Falcons have better players. The Jets have better players. The Browns have better players. But the Colts, just as a unit, the fact that they are returning basically everybody, Braden Smith, their right tackle, struggled with injuries a lot last year. He's really good. If he can stay healthy, Quentin Nelson's a future Hall of Famer. I love that Colts unit. And for keeping them afloat with the whole Jonathan Taylor mess, they made Zach Moss look good and also making their quarterbacks look pretty damn good too. I have the Eagles 3, the Falcons 4. I believe in Matthew Bergeron, by the way. Started at guard last year, the interior guy, Senior Bowl guy, Syracuse, looked really good at the Senior Bowl. Now, he allowed a lot of sacks, a lot of hits, but what gives me promise is that he allowed 19 pressures, which was 42nd in the league, despite him being in the top end of sacks and QB hits. So, fact that he didn't allow a ton of pressure, hopefully we get those sacks and those hits down. We get a little bit more consistent. I think that could lead to good future play in year 2. I have the Jets 5. Bobby, Joe Tippmann was not a disaster last year, despite us thinking that maybe he would. And then there's all pro players, like AVT, Tyron Smith around him. And I think Rodgers is going to make that offensive line look really good too. And then I have the Browns at 6.
Justin, would you shut the hell up? Because it's the bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, bases full, down 3, the crowd on their feet. The drama of baseball is real, and so is all the action with our partners, DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, all new customers who bet just $5 on anything will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's right. New customers can bet just $5 on anything and receive $150 in bonus bets instantly. From the first pitch to the final out, DraftKings has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting odds boosts, and so much more. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. So, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code FOOTBALL today and bet just $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FOOTBALL today, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You'll be glad you did.
The interesting comment you made, Bobby, was that, every group has got a weak link. Well, you have to think of it a little bit like a starting rotation in baseball where you've got 5 guys. Most teams can't fill that out with 5 guys they like. So the lack of depth in the NFL, it shows. It's why teams, I think they're nuts if they're not drafting an offensive lineman by the 3rd round every year. I just think it's certifiably insane.
I agree.
Yeah, we're the only team that
didn't do that.
Yeah, that was our gripe with the Giants draft this year.
Yeah,
he just didn't do it.
But hey, we didn't have to give up the 2nd most sacks of all time or anything last year, so it's fine.
And by the way, I think it's a word of warning to your franchise. Like the Lions, the minute that Dan Campbell came in with that front office regime, the first year they were picking guys on both sides of the line, offensive and defensive line, and they were like, "We're going to figure the rest out. We are going to get this part right." And now the Lions, I think if you ask 100 talent evaluators, probably 85 are saying that the Lions are the best offensive line, Bobby?
Oh, I think it'd be more than that. I don't even think it's a debate that the Lions have the best offensive line in NFL.
Yeah, that's good for them. Pass rush. I guess we're kind of calling it the whole defensive line, but
yeah, the front edge defensive tackle.
Yeah. Justin, you want to lead off here?
Yeah. I have the Browns number 1. Do we all have the Browns number 1?
I do.
I don't.
Yeah. You don't?
Whoa!
Oh, Chris, it's your team. I want to argue with you about that. The Eagles are at 2. It could be a stretch by me, but I really think that I'm projecting. I'm openly admitting that I am projecting with this Eagles with that Eagles front calling them number 2. I have the Cowboys at 3, Steelers at 4, Jets at 5, which feels low, and then the 49ers at 6.
Okay, so I've got Browns 1. You got Myles Garrett. You have the best defensive player in the NFL, Myles Garrett, and then Myles Garrett and Smith are 1st and 8th in pass rush win rate. That's pretty good. Dalvin Tomlinson is unbelievably underrated. You got a good player in Shelby Harris. The Jets number 2. You think about how good the Jets pass rush is, and you can argue that they upgrade. Like Hassan Reddick, he's the best edge guy that they've added to that group, right? Yeah. You add a better player, and then you have a top 3 defensive tackle in Quinnen Williams. Losing John Franklin Myers hurts a little bit, but you have Jermaine Johnson in a nice year too, and you could see Will McDonald progressing a little bit, right? So they've been the best, one of the best 3 pass rushes every year, and I think they upgraded. The 49ers 3, they are so deep, right? You have Nick Bosa, who I think is the 2nd best player in the defensive player in the NFL. Leonard Floyd, who, Floyd has 12 sacks last year, 48 over the last 4 years. And then you have Jonathan Hargrave, who's eighth in sacks, hits, and pressures after being third in 2022. And then they bring in Malik Collins, right, who was 19th in total sacks, hits, and pressures for defensive tackles last year. And then they also have some depth guys too. And then the Steelers got a great edge duo of Watt and Highsmith. Cam Hayward's a beast still. Benton's a young rising player. Cowboys 5. The Cowboys lost some depth, right? That's the reason I don't have them maybe top 2. They lost Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler. And also this is not just pass rush, right? Like they are a little thin run defense wise. We'll see how Mozzie Smith upgrades that if he puts some weight back on. And Tank Lawrence can be a little hit or miss, but I like Osa Odigizua, Golson, and Sam Williams. And then the Texans 6. I mean, Danielle Hunter's a fucking beast. You have Will Anderson. Like Danielle Hunter, what were his stats last year? I wrote he led the league in tackles for loss last year while also having 16 and a half sacks. You have the defensive rookie of the year in Will Anderson. And Danico Autry, another really underrated player. He's really good two-way player. And then you get Barnett as depth. So, and then I had my honorable mention as the Eagles, Chiefs, and I threw the Giants in there as an honorable mention.
So I had the Jets 1. You already kind of covered them. Also, Jermaine Johnson's a guy who was a first-round pick a couple of years ago. And I do think, I think that he's made some strides, and he's a guy who could be one of those, like, circle him at the beginning of the year. He's a guy that could take off in that group. I had the 49ers 2nd, and to me, first of all, they made a lot of changes. For a team that's really good and almost won the Super Bowl yet again, they did make a lot of changes on this defensive front. They added Leonard Floyd. Malik Collins is in. He's a good player. Jordan Elliott has been a longtime starter in Cleveland. He comes over for some depth, and I love it. I always love getting your guys' reaction when I say Yetur Gross-Matos, because I know how much you both like him.
And he's a good fourth edge rusher. I'll give him that.
The most important thing they did here was change defensive coordinators. Nick Sorensen has been elevated. He's been on that staff for a couple of years, and now he's going to get a chance to call the plays. I was shocked when Chase Young went over there and did not get better with as much talent as there was over there. I was like, what's going on? So I think that they're going to get back to the way that the 49ers have played along that defensive front that we've seen in recent years. That's why I had them 1 ahead of the Browns. You did a good job covering them. Dallas, I have them 4. I don't know. It makes sense because I believe in the Packers an awful lot. I've got them at 5, and I know
that's a sneaky good pick, Chris.
I know Gary, Preston Smith, Kenny Clark. That's really good.
Yeah, the Eagles, they're in there too. Damn it, Devontae Wyatt. Oh fuck, I'm regretting.
It's a sneaky. Well, I love including the Packers in this, and I'm upset that I didn't.
So they need 2 guys to kind of take it, 2 former first rounders to take it up a notch in order for me to justify them being in the top 5. You mentioned Devontae Wyatt. Van Ness is the other one. He was a rookie last year. And then Carl Brooks was a mid-round pick that has given them some production. So once again, it's all about having a ton of guys there. And I think that that's it. Now, number 6, you guys are going to get blown away by this.
Yeah.
Anybody want to guess? We haven't mentioned them at all today in any position group.
I mean, I'm looking at it, Chris. You might as well just go for it.
No. Let me guess. The Panthers?
Nope.
What is it?
It's a top-heavy group. The Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, that didn't do much for you. Maybe, is my mic on? I'll try this again. The Las Vegas Raiders.
Well, they're top-heavy, that's for sure.
Yes. So they added Christian Wilkins, who's one of the best interior defensive linemen, right?
You hated that move.
I did because I think
you wanted them to get a quarterback.
A lousy team, and they have no path. It has nothing to do with him as a player. Max Crosby, one of the best edge guys in the NFL, literally plays every snap is amazing against the run as well. Malcolm Kuntz is a guy who had 2 sacks total his first 2 years and went up to 8. John Jenkins, I think, solid. They're going to need guys to really burst on that second unit in order for me to not look like a moron. But I'm going to try it.
What's going on with Tyree Wilson?
I don't know what they're doing with him.
It's one of those, listen, about every 2 or 3 years, they pick a guy in the top 10 where you're like, what? And what are you doing? What are you doing? But that's one of these guys that's going to have to play and give them like 8 sacks to make me once again look not like an idiot.
So
Seventh overall
this is
pick.
another position where there's a lot of good groups, right? To me, it's similar to wide receiver, tight end. I want to talk about the Eagles though.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
I'm worried about, like, I think their pass rush is gonna be fine, right? But it's been such a strength to them that you lose Hassan Reddick, Bryce Huff, right? Super, like, one of the most efficient pass rushers, but now he's gets like a full-time role, and run defense is a part of this. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis kind of ran a little out of gas a little bit at the end of the year. And you've just lost Brandon Graham, Barnett. You lose Hassan Reddick. Fletcher Cox. They were so, and John, Hargrave from a couple of years ago. They were so deep where it's like they had like 6'10" plus sack guys that they're really relying on their top 3 guys. Josh Sweat's there too. They're like top 3, 4 or 5 guys, and they're also like kind of a little bit downgrades despite still being a good unit. So I'm interested to see how much of a strength they're going to be strong, but how much of a strength that Eagles front is going to be.
I was about to get mad at you for forgetting Josh Sweat, because isn't that who, when we interviewed Andrew Thomas, isn't that who he said was the toughest opponent to face?
It was either Brandon Graham or Derek Barnett.
I think it was Brandon Graham. I think it was Brandon Graham that he said, who's still there. Derek Barnett is not there. But I still think, even with Hassan Reddick gone, I still think this is one of the deepest pass rushing groups ever. Now, there may not be that one superstar. I would say Hassan Reddick was the most seasoned veteran and the guy that had the most success. But Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat, Nolan Smith, Brandon Graham, and then remember Julian Okwara? I think Jalen Carter is going to be a superstar. If he has his head screwed on straight, if he's in good shape, if he's working hard, if he's committed to improving and everything like that, all those things that we can't see off the field. So I'm not going to hold myself accountable if he's not. If that's the reason why things go wrong. But everything on the field indicates that he's going to be a superstar. And I think that coming from the interior, plus you have 4 guys that you feel totally confident in rotating in and out, that is the Eagles' path to success.
Well,
I love it.
Jalen Carter is going to be fascinating, right? Because we all went when he got drafted by the Eagles, and all I had to do was move up 1 spot to go get him. We were like, this is a heist. And we're all saying, it's the next Warren Sapp situation, the whole bit. Listen, he had Fletcher Cox right next to him and in his ear his entire rookie year. He still has Brandon Graham, but you got to imagine that's on a year-to-year basis, and he might be gone after this. Like, if he doesn't start making that leap soon, who's going to be there to be his guiding light? Like, that's a big deal.
And he just kind of sputtered out towards the end of the year a bit.
And here's the thing: he didn't just look great. He looked elite. Looked unbelievable. Now he went out towards the end of the year, and you can't ignore that. But I'm also not ignoring how it wasn't just good for a rookie; it was already elite defensive line play.
We'll see. I'm gonna wait.
I mean, to me, I agree. Like, he's their best player on the defensive line. Would you argue anybody else?
No, not him. No.
Be interesting to see if Nolan Smith can do anything in year 2.
Bryce Huff can maybe get better with more reps. He's kind of similar.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Bryce Huff, when you get the full-time role, how effective are you going to be? I know
you're going to be with it. Yeah.
Excuse me, guys. I had to sneeze there.
Oh, bless you.
Linebackers. Bobby, you want to take it?
Yeah. So this one's kind of tough.
It's a little tough.
It's very tough. Can we start this? It's very tough because of the way that defenses have changed. For people that, for whatever reason, haven't paid attention, there is no longer a 4-3-4 defense. We don't run that anymore in this league.
It's basically you're going by 2 linebackers.
If that at times. I mean, it feels like there's a lot of times where there's 1 linebacker on the field. So grading it as a group I almost didn't want to do it, but we'll do it. We're here.
But I went 49ers number 1. I think they have the best linebacker in the game, and Fred Warner, Dre Green. I know Dre Greenlaw's coming off an injury like there. The Jets number 2, right? You have like the ultimate Mike linebacker and CJ Mosley, who runs the show. And then you got Quincy Williams, who I think might have made All-Pro last year, who's like just a fast playmaker, right? 27 tackles for a loss the last 2 seasons. Like, that's just a good duo there. We talked about this on our NFC South episode the other day. The Atlanta Falcons have a really underrated linebacker group, right? Caden Ellis is really good.
Good player.
They were number one and EPA for run defense. Nate Landman was number 2 in run stop rate after JOK last year. So they're both just smart, aggressive, and they don't miss tackles at all. I put the Chiefs number 4. Nick Bolton's been really good. Leo Chanel's my guy, right? He's just a certified banger. 8 tackles for a loss last year. Tranquil does a lot for them. Coverage can ding them a little bit, but a really good group. And then Bills, Matt Milano, all pro. And he's great in every area. And then Bernard stepped up big. He had 143 tackles last year, 10 for a loss, 3 picks, and 6.5 sacks. Like they love him in Buffalo. And then the Ravens, I put number 6 because Roquan Smith is linebacker 2 in the NFL. But I hate linebacker number 2. I think Trenton Simpson, I don't know how that's going to work. If there's any team that can make Trenton Simpson work, it is Baltimore. And if there's any number 1 linebacker who can help make it work, it's Roquan Smith. But Roquan Smith is my linebacker 2 in the NFL after Warner. So I put them 6. And my honorable mention was the Saints, the Browns, the Giants, Bucks, Bengals, Bears. There's a lot of honorable mentions I have for linebacker.
I had Niners, Jets. I put the Bears in there. I know they spent a lot of money before last season on improving that area. Sounded like they got better. The last half of the year, that defense was
they got a good duo.
Was really improved. I actually had the Ravens at 4 just because I trust their system to make Trenton Simpson a decent player. The Jags, I think their room is okay.
I agree.
And then I had the Bills, and I hope that Matt Milano's okay.
Yeah, hopefully he is, because he's one of my favorite players. He's just one of the best do-it-all linebackers. Was all pro in 2022.
Oh my God. I just checked something on Foyesade Olukan, and I was shocked. Oh my God, he's a tackling menace. All right, my list. You learn something new every day. The 49ers, I have 1. I mean, you got a future Hall of Famer in there. The Jets, I have 2. The Bills, I have 3. And this is where we get to pre-draft my pre-draft guys that I just really like. The Chiefs, Nick Bolton, Leo Chanel. I loved Nick Bolton coming out of school.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Saints. Demario Davis.
They were my first honorable mention.
Is aging like a fine wine. He's 35 years old.
When was the last time you had a fine wine, Penik?
I wish I could say I partake, Chris. When's the last time you had a fine wine, Chris and Bobby?
I'm not much of a wine drinker, which is why I never use that cliche, because I just don't have experience in it, and I don't
That's fine. So you called me out on it. That's fine.
Yeah, I just don't. I think it's useless. Let's find a different. Be a better cliche monster. Use one that you're familiar with.
Age is like a fine cigar. How about that?
Me and my friends made jail wine one time.
Nice.
Well, you are in Florida.
Demario Davis
wasn't very good. It did not.
Demario
age.
Davis was a first-team All-Pro player in 2019, and he's been second-team All-Pro since 2020, every single season. Before that, didn't make a Pro Bowl or didn't make an All-Pro team. And I feel like Demario Davis has always kind of been, maybe not a household name, but he's always been a really, really good player. He has 6.5 sacks each of the last 2 seasons. I thought this guy was an off-ball linebacker. Unreal. And I also love Willie Gay. Loved Willie Gay coming out of college. And I am excited to see his fit with the Saints, especially with a really, really good linebacker in Demario Davis.
Going back home,
Saints,
too.
That's my Saints spiel, and he is going back home. And I have the Jacksonville Jaguars 6 as well. Yeah, let's talk about Foyesade Olukan here. I pronounce his name twice in 2 different ways. 192, 184, and 173 tackles the last 3 years. And he also has a good amount of tackles for loss, too. 12 tackles for loss, 8 tackles for loss the last 2 years. And Devin Lloyd is turning into a good player. I came up with that list because I recently watched the Jaguars defense go up against the Colts offense. And I was like, these linebackers are like controlling the game right now. Very good linebacker duo. Jacksonville Jaguars.
Chad Moon was pretty good too. So there's a good amount of linebacker duos in the NFL. Like I said, I had 7 honorable mentions: the Saints, Browns, Jags, Giants, Bucks, Bengals, and Bears. So
should we finish it up with the secondary, boys?
Let's do it.
I'll start one. I haven't done that. I got the Jets returning a lot of really good players, including maybe the best corner in the game. I feel kind of sick saying this, but the Ravens, their safety play is phenomenal. And I think as long as Humphrey can stay healthy, he's good enough to still lead the cornerback group.
You're reading my notes.
They did draft Nate Wiggins, which, he's a fantastic athlete. Dallas is interesting. For me, they're really boom or bust here. They're, Diggs coming back. Bland had a great 3/4 of a season. Jordan Lewis, Hooker, Donovan Wilson, those are all pretty proven players now, but they also give up a ton of yards and a ton
but they
of
create so many
plays.
turnovers. Like Diggs and Bland have 29 interceptions in the last 3 seasons, and Bland wasn't there for one of those years. And Diggs was out for basically all of last year.
Yeah,
that's like any team would sign up for that production.
Yeah,
for their starters. Like it's unreal the turnovers they create.
I do think my Cleveland Browns are number 4. They really have a lot of depth. They have a lot of guys. Their top 3 corners are really, really good. For people that haven't watched MJ Emerson, because Denzel Ward gets so much press, he is a rising player now in his 3rd year. Saints, ton of good players. They're adding Kool-Aid, Lattimore, Debo, Alontae Taylor, big physical. I like him. And then Seattle, maybe I'm trying to wish this because I like Devin Witherspoon so much. It's really on Riq Woolen. Are you going to be the guy who exploded as a rookie and wowed the world, leading the league in interceptions, or are you going to be the guy that was benched a year ago? What are you? And I think I'm betting on the former instead of the latter.
Yeah. So I had the Seahawks at 5. I mean, Witherspoon could be a star. And then you got solid players. Even I know Woolen didn't have the same years as rookie year, but he wasn't awful last year either. And then you have, decent. I know they lost Quandre Diggs, but they're all right with Julian Love. So Jets are number 1, right? You got Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. They lost Whitehead, but like the Jets were 2nd in total yards per passing yards a game, 3rd in drop back success rate, and 17 interceptions. Like Sauce Gardner, if you combined both of his years together and said those are the stats he gave up for one season, you're like, oh, he's one of the best corners in the NFL. Like 50% completion rate, 612 yards, and only 2 touchdowns allowed with 2 interceptions. Like that's insane for a guy's first 2 years of his career.
Did you write down the target and receptions too by chance?
No, I didn't. Do you have it?
Okay. No, I'll look it up. Keep going.
But it's not, look at the yards. I mean, that's 300 yards per year. That's best in the NFL, essentially. The Saints, number 2. They are really good and really deep, right? Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo. Adebo had 4 interceptions, led the NFL in forcing completions. Sometimes you'll look at that like, oh, the guy's just a risk taker, but he only gave up 1 touchdown. I like Alontae Taylor, even though he's had some struggles, but you bring in Kool-Aid McKinstry. And then Honey Badger, like he's still the Swiss Army knife and is amazing in coverage still. So, and then the Ravens, they kill it with their, like I had the same notes as Rose, like the best safety duo. Can Humphrey stay healthy and can Wiggins hit the ground running? The Cowboys, all the turnovers I brought back. And then, I put the Patriots 6 with Gonzalez, Jonathan Jones, Duggar, Peppers, and Marcus Jones. Like Gonzalez was awesome. Duggar's really good. And this is probably the best run defensive like DB group too. So I put the Patriots number 6. They're a very versatile unit.
If you add up Sauce Gardner's completions that he allowed from 2022 and 2023, it's 77. And yes, I mean it's there are corners in the NFL that allow 70 plus receptions a year, and they have jobs, which is insane. That's 2 seasons, 2 whole seasons, and he's played in 17 games and 16 games the last 2 years, respectively. Crazy. All right, am I up?
Yeah,
I have the Browns at 1. They were number 1 in EPA per dropback last year. It was not close. Kind of close. The Jets are 2. The Seahawks are 3. Another unit that I'm buying in on the upside, similar to the Eagles in their pass rush. I love Riq Woolen. I'm convinced that he's going to turn it around. I had the Ravens at 4, the Cowboys at 5, and the Saints at 6. When the Giants played the Saints this past year, that's when I really kind of fully looked at them. Like, I like this Saints secondary. They're kind of sneaky good. I'm a big Alontae Taylor guy.
So here, I think the Browns can be in this group, right? But I think you're giving them a little too much credit for the Browns front,
for the pass
we
rush?
Mentioned before. Yeah. Like you would trade the Jets group for the Browns group or the Jets group for the Browns group.
I think I can't sit here and I know the Jets have a weak safety unit, but those corners are the best in the league. Chris, how would you evaluate the play of Grant Delpit and Juan Thornhill?
Well, Thornhill got hurt right before the first game and was never healthy. He had a bad calf and tried to fight through it the entire year, so he did not have a good year. Grant Delpit has become a really good player. And one guy that he doesn't get talked about, and with good reason, Rodney McLeod. He has been brought in as Schwartz's like coach on the field, and so the first half of the year when he was there, then he blew out his biceps, and I think they missed something. They definitely missed something with him in the Houston game because guys were just running free the entire time. And a guy like that's going to make a difference. The reason I put them so high, and I have them fourth, is that they basically return their entire secondary. And I do think a lot of them are ascending players. There's very few guys that are on the back half of the career. So I think I obviously didn't put them one, but there's a lot of talent there.
So I want to ask you guys some of what your takeaways are from this entire exercise. Here's mine. The Jets have my number 2 front, my number 2 linebacker group, and my number 1 DB group. That defense, it's the defense that's been to be able the most sustainable. They are so fucking talented. Like if Rodgers can stay healthy, that offensive line can just stay halfway healthy. Don't need to stay fully healthy. Like I truly think this is a team. I'm not picking them to win the Super Bowl, but that can compete. Like they have a weak schedule. Like they have that defense is so fucking good. Like it really is all or nothing this year. Like anything less than the Super Bowl is a failure for the Jets. That defense is so good.
Come drink the Jets Kool-Aid with me, Bobby. Come do it.
Anything less than a Super Bowl for a team that has the longest playoff drought going right now is
because their quarterback is it's a small window with the quarterback.
That I agree with. It's a small window, but you can't say that it's a failure. Let's say they win a playoff game and they lose in the divisional round or something like that.
Well, not a total failure, but like it's Super Bowl or bust for them this year.
I guess, but they're going to have a lot of hurdles to climb over, guys. They just are. There's going to be injuries. I don't know where. As long as it's not the quarterback, they'll be able to make do. And then there's a lot of bullshit that comes with this team on every level. Every level is where it happens. So,
but I hate predicting that because that's not fun. But you kind of have to.
Yeah.
You kind of have to account for it.
Yep.
Do you have a takeaway, Chris?
With what?
I have mine.
Just like overall, this whole exercise, something you like came away thinking about.
Yeah, that I was more confused after I did it than before. because I have a hard time differentiating. Bobby, you do an exceptional job, I think, of seeing things through their own individual lanes. In the most team sport in the history of athletics, I have a really hard time saying in an exercise, okay, let's take a look at the running backs room. But you can't take into effect how good the offensive line is. Even if that is the exercise, I think I would fail in my mission 7 out of 10 times just because I have a hard time doing it. Doesn't mean it's not fun.
Justin?
I learned that it's a lot of fun to talk about players that are good, teams that are good, and things that are good compared to things that are bad. Because a lot of the time, I find that a piece of news happens, and we try and cover on football today, but we got to talk about the good and then we got to talk about the bad. Oh, but this is the downside of this, especially when we talk these contracts. Oh, they got to
contract talk for that shit.
They got to pay the rest of these guys. What are you gonna do? And it's all necessary. It's all like, there are like legit questions that sometimes you have to ask, but I like talking about good players because that's what makes the NFL fun. Good players, good football.
Well, the best part is when guys come out of nowhere where you just don't expect it. And how many times on this show did we say, well, in year 3, he's really got to step up or something like that? And then guys just, boom. It really is. It's fascinating. Do you think 2 years ago, we would be talking about Nico Collins maybe being the best number 2 receiver after getting a $72 million extension? Like, that's what makes the sport beautiful.
Well said.
So this was fun. Hope everybody has a really nice holiday weekend and is being safe and the whole bit. We are back at it again early next week with something. This is what we do. We always figure out something to hopefully keep you entertained. So for my guys, Skinner and Penik and producer Mikey, who does an amazing job putting the show together, I am Chris Rose. We will see you Tuesday here on Football Today.